Al Green not staying together with Congress after going against Trump.
And Uncle Bill Tilford is going to be talking about Hillary versus Putin and more coming up on The Undercurrent.
Greetings
Hello.
and salutations to everyone. Hello. What's up, Yoninah? Good to see you.
Yeah, and CBC voter.
CBC, what's up, CBC? Good to see everybody here on Wednesdays. Nice day here in where are we at? Chicago?
We're in Chicago.
74 degrees right now. It's supposed to get up to 76 only today. Nice. I'll take it. I'm not ready for the heat yet.
I'm just so delighted to be back up here in Chicago. I'm staying at my cousin's house. I don't have my regular rig here, but just being up here, yeah, it's gotten so hot down in Arkansas already. So hot, so humid, and being up here is just delightful.
Yeah, that you tend to not miss that humidity. That's for sure. We get it here.
I know we get it here, but it's like it's the worst
really
of Chicago
early,
weather on steroids down there. And the insects that we get down there, I didn't know that they made bugs that big.
I think they import them from Australia.
They may very well. All I can tell you is it's pretty. It's the weather down there is pretty miserable. So I'm thrilled to be back up here in Chicago right now and seeing you. Be hanging out with you, Uncle Warren, on Saturday, along with Chuck and some of our other good friends.
Yeah, it should be a good time. I hope the weather will be okay. Let me see here. I think I don't know. Yeah, I think it doesn't say. I don't have the full forecast here. I think we're going to be good. We might luck up. But anytime you're in town, Lainey, there's always sunshine. So.
Oh, Uncle Warren!
I don't know what I'm talking to. I'm just what's up, Chuck? Speak of the devil, and he shall materialize in his ship. Bill seems like more of a cousin. And you don't have to age us, Chuck. It's fine. We know how old we are. we can call exactly people uncle if we want to. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, we call ourselves Auntie Lady, Uncle Warren. I call Uncle Warren all the time, and he's 2 weeks older than me.
I'm also Doug Llewellyn's stunt double today. If you didn't notice that, we all have our little fun things that we put here.
We have so much. That's so much fun. It's one of the things I love about this show, but not as much as I love you, Uncle Warren.
I know. No one can top that level of love with any being. Sure. Speaking of love, don't you love when the United States does messed up things, Lainey, like intertwine their military with another countries? Isn't that neat how that is? That king of segue thing? Wait, I got a thing for that. We got Riptide. Yeah. Ripped from the headlines, ripped from his headline right there, that big giant shiny head showing movies on. Congress advances U.S.-Israeli military integration plan. What's that about? Well, this is from a few days ago, but this is what's going through right now. So a provision in a bill before the U.S. Congress could tie the U.S. and Israeli militaries far more closely together, deepening their cooperation on weapons research, production, and technology. The proposal, titled the United States Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative, appears as Section 224 of the House Armed Service Committee's version of the fiscal year 2027 National Defense Authorization Act, also known as the NDAA, the Annual U.S. Defense Policy Bill. The measure is still in an early age. The NDAA is passed by Congress each year to set U.S. military policy and authorize defense programs and spending levels. If enacted, the provision could mark a significant change in one of the world's closest military relationships, shifting the two countries from a partnership centered largely on U.S. military aid towards one in which their defense industries are more deeply intertwined. Section 224 would require the U.S. Defense Secretary to appoint an executive agent a single official to coordinate military cooperation between the U.S. and Israel. What could possibly go wrong? That work would cover joint research and development, the shared production of weapons, and the linking of military systems and data. What Congress is trying to do now is find different ways of entrenching the relationship so deep in America's own defense industrial base that it's impossible to root it out. Josh Paul, a former U.S. Department of State official and founder of the advocacy group A New Policy, said about the controversial provision. A new section of law in the NDAA would give Israel unprecedented access to American technology and would force the U.S. military to integrate Israeli defense technologies into our own critical military supply chain, giving Israel incredible leverage over America's own defense priorities, he added in a video post on social media on Friday. The two countries have already built missile defense systems together, such as the Iron Dome. The bill would extend their joint work into many more areas of modern warfare, from artificial intelligence to drones and cyber operations. The provisions come amid turmoil in the Mideast following joint U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran earlier this year. In February, U.S. and Israeli forces attacked Iran, as you know, triggering 5 weeks of war. Iran struck back at Israel and at U.S. bases in the Gulf region before a ceasefire took hold in April. And that's still up in the air, too. Israel is also facing genocide allegations in a case brought by South Africa at the ICJ, the top court of the United Nations, over its war on Gaza. So that's basically the nuts and bolts of that. And James Lee put out a video about this last week, I believe, talking about this. And basically, the heart of this is like right now we give Israel an aid package every year, right? A few $1 billion. I don't know exactly what the numbers are.
I could use that.
But I know, right? We could all use that here, right? But see, but it's voted on by Congress every year. That amount is approved. What they're trying, what these are two Republican congressmen that are doing this. One who put it in and one who's head of the committee that oversees this or something. Anyway, but this would make it where, like, if you wanted to dissolve that partnership militarily with Israel, it would be much, much harder to do because they'd already be entrenched, and not a congressional vote isn't going to send it away, which I find to be very dangerous.
Yeah. I don't know what planet I'm living on anymore. I mean, this is just, it is dangerous. It's obnoxious. And we'll be talking more throughout this show about the other areas in which our civic life are already underfunded, and that's certainly part of it. But this entanglement, this ongoing entanglement, is really distressing. I can tell you, I've been walking around. I'll bring it with the photo next time. We'll have there's a billboard down in Arkansas that I walk past, and it's this big red billboard that says an attack on one of us is an attack on us all, and it's some kind of an evangelical Christian and Jew thing going on. And I'm like, gee, I had no idea that Israel was part of NATO. I think it's worded in a way that they can say, well, we mean, humanity. But I'm sitting here saying to myself, what is this messaging? Why am I seeing this in the main drag, where people are going past constantly that this kind of propaganda and messaging? We don't need to be intertwined here. We ought not be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's mind-boggling. It's out in the open. I mean, I think this is the kind of thing people have been talking about, activists have been warning about for a while, but now just seeing it so blatantly out in the open.
Well, actually, this might be the opposite, because usually this stuff is blatantly out in the open. And when in the past, Israel has had so much support worldwide, but now, we do the story. I don't know if we did it on this one or one of my other shows where Israel is spending like $750 million on Hasbro. on this propaganda, trying to uplift their image because of all these images of what they were doing to the people in Gaza got leaked. And then all of a sudden the world opinion started turning like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then so now what they did with this, they put it in one little section in the NDAA, right? So it seems like they were just trying to slip it in there, like nobody reads these things, we'll pass it, and then it'll be law, and then that'll be it, and then we're stuck with it. So good on the journalists who actually snuffed this out, because you wasn't seeing this too much in the mainstream media. A lot of independent journalists were ferreting this stuff out too. So
and that's why, I think that's why they put these things together. And I think you make a good point here. That it's why they put these things together. They make these massive documents. Mm-hmm. And if AI is good for one thing, it's actually scanning this stuff. If you want to put it to use for that, and so that may be something for people to be aware of at this point when you're looking for this kind of thing, or not looking for this kind of thing, but you just put some keywords in and see what happens. But I was pretty shocked when I saw this story.
Yeah, it's not good at all. Because I mean that doing that with any country, not just Israel, is just not smart.
No, not smart.
Because you're leaking out all these secrets that these military, secrets and stuff that they have, and who knows what's going to happen down the road. That a friend may become an enemy, and all of a sudden they know all your business, and then, there you go. Speaking of friends, our friends up north in Canada is chosen the Swedish route. Oh, the Swedish route, Borgy. Canada chooses Sweden's Saab. This is pretty. This is one of those sob stories. So get a tissue. In defense deal over U.S. rivals, PM Mark Carney says, "What is going on here? Canada is moving ahead with the Swedish firm Saab on procuring a new fleet of Arctic surveillance aircraft." Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Wednesday choosing the Stockholm-based company over U.S. competitors. For Carney, the move addresses two key priorities: improving Canada's defense capabilities in the Arctic and reducing the country's economic integration with the U.S. What? I thought we were palsies. We were besties. We do selfies and everything together. By entering into formal negotiations with Saab on the procurement, Canada has sidelined two U.S. alternatives: the Ares X by L3 Harris and the E7 Wedgetail by Boeing. The Global Eye procurement will help us secure our north and build our economy at once, Carney said at a defense industry event in Ottawa on Wednesday. Added the A for dramatic effect. Saab applauded the news and noted plans to transfer knowledge and technology to Canada that will grow the domestic defense industry. A message also shared by Carney, that's him right there with the thumbs up. The Canadian Premier has listed the Arctic as a strategic priority, warning Canada needs to rapidly improve its defense posture in the region where geopolitical competition is rising, notably with Russia. But in choosing a European partner over a U.S. firm, Carney may further anger Trump's administration, which has already voiced frustration over Ottawa's decision to reconsider a multi-billion-dollar deal for a new fleet of U.S.-made F-35 fighter jets. When U.S. Undersecretary of Defense Elbridge Colby announced earlier this month that the Pentagon was suspending cooperation on an 86-year-old joint defense advisory board with Canada, he cited the stalled F-35 deal as an aggravating factor. Carney says Canada's historically close relationship with the U.S. has been permanently altered, and Ottawa needs to diversify its economic and security relationships, insisting bilateral ties will not return to a pre-Trump normal. So up north there in the Northland, they're moving away from their U.S. buddies there and doing business dealings, doing it overseas with Sweden. So and you're probably going to see more of that happening in the future too, as the United States pisses off each country one by one.
Yeah, and when you tick off the Canadians to that degree, Mark Carney's just said, "Look, this has been permanently altered. This relationship has been permanently damaged." And here we are. And I mean, I'm of Swedish extraction myself, so I'm glad that they're getting whatever it is that they need, yeah, from the Swedes. But yeah, I mean, this is just an example of what's going to be happening. And my guess is, that we're going to see this in other ways. I think last week we were reporting about how people who were coming in, journalists that were coming in for an international, I think it was a soccer match, were being warned about their safety. For coming over here. And now people are taking their business elsewhere. I can't imagine that people are going to be wanting to visit the U.S. all that much. What that's going to do to tourism. So here we are.
Yeah, it's already with FIFA and the big World Cup that's happening here, advising journalists and athletes, watch out, ICE is over here, and they're a bit off their nut, and they seem to just do whatever the hell they want to. Yeah, that is definitely a warning sign that if this was a business, your business is faltering big time.
Land of the free, home of the brave, and you have to warn your journalists about getting kidnapped or worse.
And I never thought Canada would turn against the United States in that regard. Not like they're betraying them, but they're just taking their business elsewhere.
We don't want to do business with you. I mean, I wouldn't tolerate it from a business person in my own community. Why, I wouldn't tolerate this kind of stuff. I'll take my business elsewhere. Hey, Bella.
What's up, Bella? Good to see you. And like I said, they're pissing off the Europe and NATO too. It's going to get to the point where the United States is going to be an island. 2 more years of his administration, unless the Democrats actually grow a spine and actually find a way to impeach him and convict him. They've impeached him twice, but they haven't convicted him. So 3rd time's a charm, and we'll see. What's not charming is fungal storms.
No.
Yeah, it's not a thing at all to be celebrating. Unless you're fungus yourself, then good for you. But apocalyptic fungal storms are now surging across the U.S. Yeah, so this is recent, right? This looks like something out of what is it? Fury Road, right? The last Mad Max movie that they had, with this big giant dust things coming at you. This is like it happened like at the turn of the century in the 20th century, right? Dust bowls and stuff. So dust storms are becoming increasingly common sights throughout much of the U.S., fueled by hot and arid conditions brought about by global warming. While there are the ever-present dusters in states like Arizona, those living in regions like the Midwest and Pacific Northwest are now learning what it means to be swallowed by these great walls of sand and dirt. These dust storms are dangerous enough on their own, leading to spikes in emergency room visits and disrupting agricultural economies. But according to writing climate scientist Bill McGuire in the BBC Science Focus, dust storms are now becoming vectors for massive clouds of fungal spores, an event he calls fungal storms. Far out as that may sound, McGuire writes that fungus and bacteria traveling along with dust particles has been strongly correlated with outbreaks of bacterial meningitis across the Sahel region of Africa. In the continental U.S., they're becoming increasingly tied to outbreaks of valley fever, a lung infection caused by the spores from the fungus Coccidioides. Coccidioides, caca. It's spores from caca. One 2017 research paper published in Geophysical Research Letters noted that incidence of valley fever ballooned by over 800% from 2000 to 2011 in 2 geographical areas with high concentrations of the infection. Dust storms were found to better correlated with the disease than any other known controlling factor, though some have argued the term fungal storm is more media hyperbole than a well-defined scientific phenomenon. Further research has noted abundant evidence pointing to dust storms as a vector for pathogens like valley fever. Whatever you call it, it's clear the dangers of dust storms are growing right before our eyes. The Secretary General of the World Meteorological, I can never say that name, and I worked with meteorologists. I can say meteorologists, but that meteorological, that's peanut butter in the mouth. The WMOC, the WMO, I should say, Celeste Salo told McGuire, sand and dust storms do not just mean dirty windows and hazy skies. They harm the health and quality of life of millions of people and cost millions of dollars through disruption to air and ground transport, on agriculture, and on solar energy productions. Yeah, so now, and you see this in southern Illinois, although, what was it, last year, the year before last, there was a dust storm that was threatening Chicago too. I think we got a little bit of that too. So,
well, we saw that. In fact, we were talking about it last week. It happened in central Illinois, and a lot of people died in that car pileup. I mean, it was not just the one of the side effects was that there was a massive pileup, and people were dying. I think it was like 9 people died, and a lot more got hurt. It was pretty serious. But now this whole thing with the fungal stuff, that really scares me. I'm by no means a doctor, but I keep hearing that fungal infections are much harder to treat than bacterial, and that they're very strange. Fungal infections are just very, very strange, and they're not easy to treat at all. So, that was not very comforting when I saw that. And then, of course, we could all turn into fungal zombies and bite each other.
One could hope. Or as I call that, Saturday night. But no, yeah, when it's dry conditions like that, and anything that can attach to dust particles like that, and then you got this big ass dust storm coming at you, and you're like, wait a minute, was this like the early 1900s? What are we doing here? There. And
it's not just a matter of sitting. Okay, you can go inside and sit at home or whatever, but that's not going to keep the stuff from getting into your house, then into your lungs, and then trying to get it out of you is not that easy. I mean, it's just one of those things. It's just an absolute the stuff of nightmares, as far as I'm concerned.
Another nightmare is the war on public health here. We're talking about Lee Zeldin, his war on public health. Zeldin's EPA to relax drinking water rules was the headline this week in the daily newspaper Newsday on Long Island, New York, from which Lee Zeldin, the administrator of the U.S. EPA, is from. The subhead: plans to rescind PFAS limits, delay removal deadline. The article on 2 pages began with telling how the EPA is proposing to rescind federal limits on certain toxic forever chemicals in drinking water established 2 years ago by the Biden administration. The Trump administration plans to roll back restrictions on 4 types of these chemicals known as PFAS. Another proposed rule would allow water suppliers to request 2 more years to comply with limits on 2 other PFAS compounds, PFOS and PFOA. Water suppliers were initially given until 2029 to meet the standards under the Biden plan, but they will now be eligible for an extension to 2031. It went on. PFAS, or per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, have been used in thousands of industrial and consumer products, from nonstick pans to artificial turf to fast food wrappers. There are tens of thousands of PFAS compounds, very few of which are regularly and they do not easily break down, thus the term forever chemicals. They enter groundwater when they are washed down the drains of ordinary households. Researchers have found long-term exposure to PFAS, even in tiny amounts, increases the risk of prostate, kidney, and testicular cancers, developmental problems in infants and children, and other health programs. It's difficult to rate who is the worst member of Trump's cabinet, but certainly Zeldin is on the top tier amid stiff competition. The New Yorker magazine has just run an article 7 full pages long, which in the magazine is headlined "Burning Man, Lee Zeldin's Assault on the EPA," and online is headed "Can the EPA Survive Lee Zeldin?" In a little more than a year, Zeldin has transformed the EPA from an agency devoted to protecting human health and the environment into one that more or less openly sides with polluters. He's packed the EPA's upper echelons with former industry lobbyists, scrubbed entire databases of information from its website, and dissolved whole departments. Under his leadership, the agency has ditched a long list of rules that industries had objected to, including regulations aimed at cutting Americans' exposure to arsenic, a known carcinogen, mercury, a potential neurotoxin, and PM 2.5, a form of very fine soot that has been shown to cause asthma and lung disease. The EPA has not only abandoned its own efforts to rein in greenhouse gas emissions, it stepped in to prevent states from taking action. And and it goes on, and you can read the full articles in whole on our Substack. But basically, yeah, it's just another Trump crony doing his business, not really caring about people's health, but the health of corporations' wallets, right?
Very much indeed. And now we're hearing about air quality being compromised, dust storms, and now water quality. And we've been reporting on water for a while, Uncle Warren. The quality of water. We saw what happened to that poor lady in that small town who got arrested for reporting on people having brown water in their sinks. What is it with people not wanting people to have clean water?
Yeah, I guess they don't want people to have it, but they want data centers to have it. That's for damn sure.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it again, just like it was during the pandemic, it was never about anybody's health. It was about making money. It was about controlling people. And the EPA, I tried to talk to my Southern folks. I have a lot of cousins who are Republican, but they're deer hunters. They go out in nature. They go camping. They go canoeing in the creeks and whatnot. And I always tell them, look, man, I said this whole thing about climate change and what we're doing to our own waters and stuff isn't bullshit. I'm just trying to help you out and understand that your neck of the woods literally is being affected by this stuff. And a lot of times they don't know that. They go fishing and they may, catch polluted water, or the deer that they go hunt are not there because they're dying from chemicals or whatever that's in the woods. It's really frustrating. But when you put it from a local angle like that, it's easier to tell people about it. But yeah, like we said, this guy, he's just a yes man for Trump. So basically, I look at this as this is Trump's hand up his ass saying, I don't care. My people who make plastics and stuff, they're not doing anything wrong. Blah, 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 blah. Let's make more money. And that's the bottom line. Let's make more money, it seems like.
Yeah. And I remember back when the Reagan years, when they had James Watt as Secretary of the Interior. It wasn't the EPA, but he said, we don't have to bother defending the environment here because Jesus is going to come and take us all away anyways.
Oh, that's why I'm mad at Jesus, because he didn't take him away.
I think he eventually did.
Well, I don't know if Jesus did. So he left this mortal coil, whereabouts unknown, but kind of probable he's in the hot place. So crazy stuff there. Just another symbol that your government is not for you, it's for other people. Which leads us to how we can't vote our way out of these situations a lot of times because the same people come in. But we still look at these elections and things of that nature. And we've been checking out what's been going on in Indiana with our good friend Bill Tilford. Let me just do a couple of things here. Bring him in. Bill.
Hiya.
Good to see you.
Back in that person's house. You got to stop breaking in that person's house. They're going to want to play that piano in the back sooner or later, and you're on the air, and they can't do that. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm wiring it so it'll only play Thelonious Monk, no matter what they try to do on the keyboard.
As well you should. How you doing, sir?
Pretty good. Interesting show so far. For what it's worth, I worked in the San Fernando Valley in 2002 and got some lung disease. I don't know to this day what it was, but for the few weeks that I had it, it was horrific.
I can imagine.
Anyway, before we get to what you probably want to ask about, I need to give you an update on Ms. Paula Copenhaver, in that disputed district we talked about.
Oh, yes.
Those 14 voters who she's questioning on account of their social media posts are now 11 because it turned out 3 of them neither lived nor voted in Copenhagen's district. This gets better. The law that her attorneys are trying to use is a fairly obscure piece of the Indiana code. And guess when you have to challenge the vote, if you're going to challenge it? At the voting booth as they're trying to take the ballot. There's nothing in the statute about afterwards. So this will still go to court. Not, it's not like the courts have enough to do or anything. It'll probably hit in July, but court systems, continuations are possible. But one of our most ghastly Republicans, Lieutenant Governor Mika Beckwith, he would be worth an episode in his own right as far as horror shows go, is going to try to shepherd a new Indiana statute to close the primaries. That has failed time and again and is likely to fail again. We discussed the reasons why last time, but he's going to give it the old college try again. Alternately, in a way, it is kind of interesting that you have to challenge during the voting process and afterwards you're done. But that's a longer conversation for another day. At any rate, it would take something truly bizarre for the court to support Copenhagen's Harer's motion. But we live in bizarre times.
We do. We do.
So there's some other stuff on your mind, I believe.
There is. We do. So we have Al Green, who is not staying together. And we're wondering if you want to start with that, and then we can talk about we got a lot of stuff we can be talking about.
Yeah. Mr. Green is not only going to take us down a long rabbit hole, but it has branches.
Okay.
So, but maybe he's a good place to start.
Right.
Al was an attorney and actually had some serious civil rights cred with the NAACP, among other things down there. He's not an Al Sharpton from his youth.
Okay.
He was more of a serious activist.
Okay.
And he became a representative down in Texas in 2005.
Okay.
And didn't really get on our radar up here for a very long time. But now we have to jump way, way ahead. And comes the first Trump election. Al was in the first wave of people that even before Trump was inaugurated in 2016 was looking for ways to impeach.
Okay.
He and Maxine Waters were probably the two most vocal. Remember the story of the boy who cried wolf?
I do.
Yeah, if there's ever a cautionary tale for the American body politic, this is it. Because that noise was happening, not my president, got to impeach now. And one of our branches is going to be Hillary Clinton and etc. But let's stay with Al for a moment. Because that happened, future attempts at actual impeachment were already suspect before the day that they happened. And being a political junkie, I actually watched both impeachment processes in detail. And I have to be honest with you, the first one looked a little shady procedurally. They kind of cut some corners.
Right.
And the post-January 6th, the Democrats even literally brought in a Hollywood consultant.
Yeah, I saw that. That was, ooh.
But what happened, again, going back to what did all of this noise do? There were a lot of people in what I'll loosely describe as the center right that bought into the narrative that these are deranged. This was an early iteration of TDS, deranged Democrats. And they were more inclined to believe the Trump narrative because of what was coming from the other side. You wanted to impeach this guy before he even did day one in office, so why should I trust that what's happening here is on the up and up?
Right.
And a good summary statement, I guess, was in the course of doing what they did, they ended up giving Neo Caligula some extra Teflon. And for that reason, I don't particularly shed any tears for his departure.
Okay.
Now, he's the victim of a redistricting.
Okay.
Texas redistricting held. So his replacement is there primarily because of that. But again, I'm not shedding too many tears. If he and Maxine and a few other people had been a little quieter in the beginning, we may still have ended up with impeachment, but there would have been less of a reflexive defense instinct on the part of the right and the center right. Now we have to work in Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
And it will connect. So, but bear with me. And here we also have to go back in time. During Billy Clinton's first term, relations between the White House and Russia were not chummy, but reasonably okay.
Yeah.
There is an interlude where Medvedev, who had been prime minister, flips seats with Putin because Putin can only have 2 terms. But a couple of things happen there in the middle. One of them is Russia's war with Georgia, which kind of sour relations a little bit. And the other is Hillary Clinton becomes Secretary of State. And for reasons that are not entirely clear to me, Hillary was really into, I don't like this Putin. We have, by the way, quite a bit of background noise coming through I'm not sure if it's just me.
Let me see. It could be on I'm in a house with many people. Hold on.
That's better. As long as we can all still hear each other.
These are just people that I keep around. They don't have anywhere else to go. They're very bored people. Shut up! I'm trying to do a show here, people. What are you?
Kind of like my piano. Okay. Where was I?
You were talking.
Hillary Clinton, as active Secretary of State, actually tries to destabilize Putin's term. And of course, the 2014 invasion of Crimea happens all kind of in the middle of this. Now, I have to digress just a little bit. Countries have been interfering in each other's elections since there have been elections. Everybody does it, including us. In fact, if we can't do it the easy way, we've been known to assassinate leaders we don't like. More recently, we don't always have to kill them. We just dump billions of dollars. Witness our current president. So everybody does it. So actually, the real answer to the question, did Russia probably try to influence things a little bit? Yeah, it would be kind of incompetent of them if they didn't try. Was it the game changer? I really, truly, seriously doubt that. In
Mhm.
order to believe that, you would have to believe that Russia was pulling the strings on the
Mhm.
US media conglomerates. If you go back to the Republican primaries, and again, being a junkie, I watched those religiously. I kept scratching my head before the 26th election. Why is it that Trump's on there all the time? All the time. How is he getting all this free airtime? If it's free, if there's no money sliding under the table. But I'll give everybody the benefit of the doubt. It was free airtime. And my theory, which I can't prove, but I happen to like, is that the media, which at that point in time was largely, not exclusively, but largely leaning Democratic, if you take, say, Fox out of the picture, thought that Trump would be the easiest Republican candidate for Hillary Clinton to beat. To put it in balder terms, one of my favorite cartoons from the World War I period, it was a series of panels, and it started with Kaiser Wilhelm tying dynamite sticks to a dachshund with Bolshevism labeled across. Sends it over to Russia, blows up in the Tsar's face. And the next panel comes back wagging its tail at the Kaiser. And sure enough, there are 3 sticks of dynamite that somehow hadn't blown up yet.
Mhm.
And I think, again, Clinton's loss was multifactorial. But
Mhm.
that, I think, had a more significant role than Russian interference.
Well,
But
wasn't there like the night that she lost? Wasn't that the Pied Piper strategy? It was basically the plan was to blame Russia. That's where
yes,
RussiaGate was
yes,
born,
yes.
and not her incompetent campaign. They blamed Russia because you couldn't. And since then, the autopsies on the DNC have just been limited, and it just seems like far fetched too that they have no idea that was of their own doing. I would say yes. Yeah, you're right. Yes, did Russia do some meddling? Probably, but they probably allowed the incompetents in our country to do what they do best, and they said, "Well, you're doing better job than we are. What do we
Yeah,
need? Here you go, shirtless Bernie. I'll give you shirtless Bernie. How about that? That's all we did. We did shirtless Bernie, and you did the rest. It just seems like that."
yeah, and we have to bear in mind that even if they were, we were doing the same thing going in the other direction at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. So,
Oh yeah.
it's not like we can be shocked.
What,
Uh,
America meddles in other people's elections?
right.
Bill, that's just crazy talk. Nobody. Wait, what? Oh,
But
that
now,
happens. Oh, it does. Oh, never mind.
but
Sorry.
but but now let's plug Alan Maxine and company back into this. I don't think they came out of nowhere. I think they were part of supporting the Clinton narrative.
Mhm.
And if Trump really was a Russian tool, then of course he had to be kicked out right away. Quote unquote.
You, it makes me wonder the utter ineptitude of the DNC, the remarkably poor instincts we see on display. Um, is it just that they've been elevating just increasingly incompetent people? What's going on with these folks? Are they just so beholden to their donor base, which is people with other agendas, including just wanting to make a whole lot of money? I'm it just seems like very poor instincts, and they do things that don't work repeatedly, and they don't learn from it, and they just double down.
With some exceptions that prove the rule, a lot of the same money lands in both parties to cover
Mm-hmm.
their debts.
Yeah.
But you have to have a wrestling match.
Hmm.
There has been some truth to the expression uniparty. Either party is going to drop bombs.
Mm-hmm.
Even Billy Clinton lobbed some missiles to take our minds off of Monica and the blue dress. So, and now we have the Epstein files. So Epstein, however, So it's a miracle we haven't nuked Tehran.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that because maybe that's next month's coming attraction. But both parties are in there. Where the wedge has been is, quote, social issues, unquote. But the truth is, when you get to the presidential level, there's not a hell of a lot that the POTUS can do on that particular subject. Anyway,
Yeah.
at least not when he's following the Constitution, but that's another thread I'm not going to pull on right now. But it gives the voters the delusion of choice. The Democrats, unhappily, when it comes to social issues, have had to cobble together. It might be unfair to call it a coalition of the weird, but actually, both of them, when you get to social issues, I guess that description would fit. It's just different flavors of weird.
True. Fair enough.
You know.
Well, when you get to here's the thing I've noticed in the last several administrations, right? Republicans want to do absolutely nothing for people. They want to do everything for corporations and whatnot. And we see that. We see the evidence of that. They claim that, oh, you know, we want to stop abortions. You're killing babies. But then once the babies are born, they don't really give a shit about the babies. So I don't really pay attention to that. But what we see is like when the Democrats are in charge, it seems like they have these token programs that they push, like a lot of times for children, because that tugs at the heartstrings of Democrats, right? It's like, this children, see, we put a lot of money into this children's program. Okay, but what about housing? What about infrastructure? What about all this other stuff? The Republicans won't let us do it. Even when you have a majority in the House and Senate and you're the president, they won't let us do it. The parliamentarian comes to mind. Remember that joker, the parliamentarian that Biden refused to to fire because, well, the parliamentarian says we can't do this. My hands are tied. And I'm like, really? Come on. I mean, anyway, just putting that out there. So
everybody wants to solve housing, but here too we could trace the mischief back into the 1700s if we wanted to. Our original land grabs, and I say this as someone whose ancestors were part of the pioneers, if you like.
Yeah.
You know, my people went into Kentucky in the 1700s, but you know, they weren't buying from real estate firms. But there were guys even like George Washington were land speculators. I mean, I'm not into the whole 1610 narrative, but if you look just at land speculation, yeah, that was real.
Yeah.
And it was land speculation after you moved some other people out of your way. In more recent years, though, part of looking at how housing became a mess, I assume you've ever seen Flip This House?
I've heard of it. I know what it's about. Yeah.
Housing has morphed into an investment vehicle rather than a place to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And consequently, you have the same economic interests that diddle in other asset management. And real estate is just one more tool. And as long as that's how we view it first, which is investment asset, and by the way, people live in there, neither party's going to fix it. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about what's happened with Airbnb. People, you know, scooping up properties to not to live in, to even to rent to others to live in, but as they're turning them into makeshift or vacation homes in the middle of residential neighborhoods.
Yes.
And what has happened there. And by the way, Airbnb just sounds like a very bad idea on the face of it, just because if you're not an innkeeper by trade, you have no business keeping an inn. And you hear all the horror stories of things that happen to people in those places. But it's, you know, you see people buying that. You see hedge funds that are going out and buying up homes, single family homes, and then renting them out when they have no particular interest in actually doing the work of a landlord. And that's something else we see that comes up.
And you have people buying homes and putting a new lick of paint on it and trying to sell it for another $40,000.
And that was happening big time. I worked in the real estate education industry for a while, and this was right around the time of right before the 2008 crash. 2000, when that was all happened, 2007, all that stuff was happening. And I was going to all these meetings of real estate appraisers, and every meeting we were at leading up for years, they kept on trying to warn people about this. They were we had appraisers who were, going to state commissions, and saying, look, we are being told by lenders, banks, if we don't come in with this number, they are striking us off their list of approved appraisers. Can you help us? And the commissioner said, no, we cannot do that. But if you do that, we'll take your license. And they said, okay, we understand that, but can you get the word out this is happening? That's because the appraisers were, for the most part, very vulnerable. They were, small business people, independent business people, even the commercial appraisers out there. Yeah, they had their firms, but they were not huge, and they were certainly dwarfed by lenders. And what happened when everything just tanked and the bottom fell out because of all the real estate fraud that was going on, and believe me, the appraisers were very aware of it. I think it may have been the Washington Post, I don't remember what it was, but they ran a whole thing blaming appraisers, even though the appraisers had been quite publicly, but nobody was paying any attention to them, saying, look, we're being told that we're going to lose our livelihoods if we don't come up with a number here. And it was really something else. And watching this happen in real time, it was years. I mean, there was several years before everything fell out. And I was hearing it. These were public. These were very open meetings. You could hear what was going. Public meetings, and nobody took any action. The press did not pay any attention until the pain started hitting.
Now, circling back to the more high-level party problems from 30,000 feet. The word fascist came out prematurely too. In fact, I was an early resistor. I take that word very, very seriously.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, on June the 3rd, 2026, the current administration does meet the actual definition of fascism. There's a Führer principle. There's a rule by decree with the rubber stamp Congress. And the state is even buying into corporations. It's a fairly quiet story, but the U.S. government has been buying shares of some companies as an equity stake. And, kind of happening while we sleep. So now it actually meets not Nazism. Nazism has its own nuances, but fascism, state capitalism with a strong central leader, it actually meets that. But it came out years before we were anywhere near there. So getting back to the boy who cried wolf, people kept hearing fascist, 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 Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. When the wolf showed up.
I know. We were talking about this a little bit with Dr. Ellen Jimerson, who was on our show, about the use of the word hate, the way that the word hate gets thrown around and used a lot, and that people don't take it seriously because of the way it gets applied to anybody who happens to not agree with every aspect of a certain agenda. And then it loses its potency, and then people don't take it seriously. And now you've made some good points with some other words, some other things that people just, whether it's Russia, or fact, or Nazi or whatnot, when they're overused or misapplied, they lose their potency, and it leaves you with a limited vocabulary once it's changed in that circumstance.
Yeah. So what else you got?
Well,
all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah. The king of segue here. Yeah, we have other stuff here we can talk about. I just like wrap this up real quick and to say that that a lot of times people have Trump derangement syndrome not because of the things they actually find out on their own. It's because of what the current clique, cult, bubble, whatever you want to call it, is telling them, is feeding them talking points too. And it's like, yeah, there's reasons to get angry at Trump, but you should learn these things on your own because some of these things are, yeah, they're happening, but then a lot of times things aren't happening that are being, like you said, the boy who cried wolf. You keep saying stuff that may or may not be true about somebody, and it turns out they're not. Then they're not going to believe you anymore. So I always tell people, use your critical thinking skills when it comes to this kind of stuff. And there's plenty of information where you could dig in on your own without having to listen to pundits or these professional podcasters who are trying to tell you how to act and think a certain way. So
yeah, I agree 200%, and that's actually becoming a social malaise all across the board.
Yeah.
I increasingly find myself either shutting people down or telling them to put their mental clipboard aside, or because sometimes even as I'm speaking, I can tell they're sitting there. Let's see, is it number 4 or number 5?
Yeah, they're gonna. I haven't used excuse number 6 to hate him. Tiny hands. Who gives a shit about the size of his hands? I'm like, what's the size of the fascism? That's what I want to know.
But it's not just about Neo Caligula. Unfortunately, it's spilling into our broader culture generally. And
it's systemic.
Yeah, we're losing the ability to listen to each other as this is happening.
Yes, absolutely.
That didn't start with Trump either. That started a while back too. So
true.
Speaking of stuff that's happened before, we get to our next segment here, the recurring tide, some stories we've been covering and keeping you updated on. Speaking of Trump, Trump, his ears must be burning. Or at least the one that was not shot. Trump's new Medicaid rule designed to ensure people lose health care, critics warn. Yes, so another punishment of the masses for going against Herr Trump. The Trump administration on Monday unveiled a rule that is expected to push millions of low-income people off Medicaid by imposing complex bureaucratic barriers in the form of work reporting requirements, which have proven disastrous at the state level. So if it's bad on the state level, let's bump it up to the national. Why not, right? That's the natural thing. The rule released by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, marks a key step toward enacting the Republican budget reconciliation package that Trump signed into law last summer. That measure included around $900 billion in cuts, $900 billion in cuts to Medicaid, with new work requirements projected to amount to nearly $330 billion of that total. The new rule will dictate how states must implement the budget law's Medicaid work mandates and who is exempt from the requirements, aka more red tape for you and me. States are already spending tens of millions of dollars hiring new staff and upgrading technology in preparation for the mandates taking effect next year. Broadly, the Trump GOP law requires adults without disabilities between the ages of 19 and 64 to demonstrate at least 80 hours of work, community service, or other qualifying activities per month to keep their Medicaid coverage. Exemptions to the work reporting requirements include people who are pregnant, caregivers to children under the age of 14, or medically frail. That's in quotation marks, so I guess that's up to interpretation. The CMS rule defines the latter category as those with physical or behavioral health conditions that significantly impair their ability to consistently work or participate in other community engagement activities. Advocates warned that the rule will force many sick people off coverage. The rule states that people with HIV/AIDS, end-stage renal disease, and cancer would not necessarily be exempt from the work reporting requirements. Oh, yes, if you end-stage renal disease and cancer, you can still work. According to the New York Times, states had expected that people with certain serious diagnoses would qualify for the exemption, and they had been developing ways to match applications with existing medical records to identify most such people automatically. Nebraska's Medicaid program, which began enforcing a work requirement last month, developed a list of exempted conditions that is nearly 300 pages long. The Times reported the state will now need to adjust. Anthony Wright, executive director of Families USA, said Monday that far from protecting the vulnerable, this guidance significantly raises the barrier for demonstrating medical frailty, meaning many patients in the middle of treatment will have the new hassle of proving their condition over and over, with any mistake or gap being penalized by the loss of their health care and coverage. Through this rule, CMS is requiring duplicative documentation and prohibiting states from taking full advantage of consumer-friendly tools like self-attestation. During the first year of the work reporting requirements, which are set to take effect nationwide in January next year, people will be allowed to attest in Medicaid applications that they meet one of the exemptions, according to administration officials. Beginning in 2028, states will be expected to verify the exemptions. The temporary flexibility, the officials said, is intended to give states time to build systems that can verify exemptions using claims data and other records. More here, as we say, you can read the rest of this on our Substack. This punishing people and giving the false this false idea that the national debt is because of people on Medicaid and Social Security and whatnot. And meanwhile, a $2.7 trillion military budget is set to be passed. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is what I guess I've come to expect it at this point, but it really, when you're dealing with sick people, it's one of the problems here is we can all say, look, nobody wants fraud going on in any social program. No, nobody wants that. But you also have to consider the cost you have to weigh that against the cost of trying to enforce that, which can be extensive. How are these states, who are already in many cases underfunded, these departments are already underfunded, now these folks have to go out and try and verify everybody's medical claims. And then there's also the cost of what happens when somebody gets kicked off or they're suspended or something like that, and they end up getting sicker in the meantime, and that person may never be able to come back. And they require more care and more expensive care over time. So this, again, if we had well-funded state agencies that were able to investigate and look over all these things, if we had good access to healthcare so that people were not allowed to get extremely ill or even more disabled because they have to wait for care, being more stringent about requirements or being more nuanced about requirements might make some sense. We don't even have that at this point. I remember, this was going on back in the UK, where they do have state healthcare, the NHS, and they had decided to contract with a French company to evaluate all of their cases. And they were at the point where they were requiring people who had lost their limbs to prove that their limbs hadn't grown back, that they were still amputees.
Oh my God!
I mean, it was things like that, and there were some even worse stories that came out. But that was the kind of thing that was happening. It turned into harassment, and it was very much the sense that maybe they just really want people to die. People were just saying, "Look, they just want these folks to die." And if that happens here, where we don't even have that level of administrative architecture here, we don't have the administrative infrastructure to be reviewing everything constantly. How many more people end up just dropping out because they're too sick to attend?
Well, what's going to happen is they're going to let AI decide.
Yeah.
And, as the AI and algorithms go, for some of us have been in the YouTube biz for a while, we know that's never a good thing when you get the old robots involved in trying to decide who gets health care and who hasn't. Oh, the algorithm said that you only worked 79 hours or some bullshit like that. And you're like, What? Yeah, you know, because that kind of stuff is going to happen, right? It's probably a lot of that stuff's probably happening in Nebraska where they're already pushing this stuff that's already happening. And you do that nationwide, yeah, you're looking at more and more people who are going to die because they haven't jumped through the right number of hoops to get their Medicaids that they paid into.
Yeah.
This isn't like free stuff. You know, a lot of these older people have paid into it for a while, and to say that you're going to deny them access by making them do this kind of stuff is you're asking for pitchforks and torches. Just
and again,
saying.
you're dealing with people who are sick. I remember I was reading about another guy. It was here in the U.S. A gentleman, a young man. I believe he had cancer, and he was looking at the possibility of an amputation. And while he was trying to deal with all this, that utter disruption, he had to sell himself to the hospital to be able to get their charity care. I encountered a young woman once. She had been bit by a brown recluse spider, went to an emergency room where they're required to provide immediate treatment, but they told her that they could not, because she didn't have insurance, didn't have the money to pay, that they couldn't treat her for the brown recluse spider bite until it looked like she was either going to die or lose the limb. So they sent her back home, and she had to monitor the bite until it got bad enough. I think she went back a couple of times, thinking it was bad enough, and it wasn't, and which just added to the expense for something that could have been managed fairly quickly. This is not good, and if they're going to start using AI, I use AI a fair amount. AI misses a lot. We have people have their medical records in various places these days. This is a potential recipe for disaster.
So Spirit of the Age says, I worked IT in a hospital for 20 years. Software has been telling doctors how to treat people for years. Yeah. So this is, it's like out of the frying pan into the AI fire, as it were. Although we have a story coming up about how AI in businesses may not be a good thing since it's costed so much money, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Bill, you have any thoughts on that? You're just enjoying the...
No, I have a couple. In an earlier life, I was involved in health insurance for a time.
Mm-hmm.
Was one of the failed reformers, although not in favor of Clinton care. But by way of intro, as far as the defense budget, relatively, Lainey knows from her Orwell that blowing stuff up is part of how you keep too much resources falling into the hands of civilians who might get overeducated and restless and cause party trouble. Anyway, part of the road not taken with all of this, we have this crazy quilt of federal, state, and local for public sector funded healthcare. I, in my old age, am turning into a bit of a convert. If I go back to my Ron Paul years, even he said the free market's ideal, but if you can't get a really free market, and he acknowledged that we didn't, it was kind of a rigged game. Maybe Medicare for all would be the best plan B.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be true for us, but the story gets complicated with these 50 states that we have administering things. Financial viability depends in part on the size of your risk pool. So you've got New York and you've got California, and they're big and they're kind of bankrupty, but they're bankrupty with kind of everything. It's not just the social safety net.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont, where there's not much of a risk pool, and consequently, it only takes a few bodies going bad to really ding your system. If we can't do Medicare for all, part of a plan C would be possibly regional state contacts. and how you get there from here is complicated. But if, say, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa could collaborate on an interactive system, that wouldn't fix everything, but it might mitigate some of the financial volatility. Will that in turn make things more compassionate? Not necessarily. It doesn't solve the work. Well, it might mitigate the work rule thing in this sense. If you get the right states combined, you are less likely to get the least Dickensian. You are less likely to get the most Dickensian interpretation of how to implement things.
Yeah. It may
like put Minnesota and the Dakotas together, for example. North Dakota, you probably get Full Metal Dickens. Minnesota, probably not. They would have to find somewhere in the middle. How do we administer this so it's less bad than the White House wanted?
Yeah, it may end up being something that has to be a regional fix, and depending on the economies of those regions too, right? Because if it's poor regions, a lot of times they're going to be, maybe you have less people that you have to take care of in those, so it may be kind of relative, but it's still, it's just so far-fetched that people have been paying into these things all these years, and then all of a sudden they're just,
Yeah, and nobody's going to want to pair up with West
playing
Virginia.
bongos.
Nobody's going to want to pair up with West Virginia voluntarily, for example.
Yeah.
So you're going to have those problems.
Black lung and all that.
Yeah, getting a lot of these coalitions together is probably going to be hard enough. So the only way I see it is getting any of this done is a total, reworking of the system, and people standing up and saying, look, we need to stop what's going on and just stop this current system. But people are too comfortable in their little bubbles to do that right now. But pretty soon, even those bubbles aren't going to be very comfortable for long. Let's go over here to Missouri, and they're talking about SNAP. As Missouri cut aid. As Missouri cut aid for fruit and vegetable purchases after SNAP junk food push. Missouri lawmakers spent part of this year's legislative session arguing that the state should steer low-income families away from buying candy, soda, and desserts with public benefits. Then they passed a budget that eliminates $2 million for a program designed to help those same families buy more fruits and vegetables. Huh? Sounds like they don't want them to have any food. What? Double Up Food Bucks, run by the Mid-America Regional Council in Missouri and Kansas, allows people enrolled in SNAP to double the amount of fresh produce they bring home using their benefits at participating grocery stores and farmers markets. The program is not in immediate danger of disappearing. Governor Mike Kehoe signs the budget passed by lawmakers earlier this month. Its funding, drawn from a mix of federal, state, and private sources, is secure in the short term, but Donna Martin, director of Double Up Food Bucks in Kansas and Missouri, said losing state funding would make the program less stable and harder to expand in parts of Missouri where it currently has few partners. The Missouri state funding is the reason why we have locations in Missouri that are outside of the Kansas City area, Martin said. For supporters, the cut is especially frustrating because it comes after lawmakers and Kehoe push to limit SNAP purchases of candy and sugary drinks in order to improve nutrition. During House budget debate earlier this month, Democratic State Representative Ian Mackey of St. Louis pointed to that contradiction. A few weeks ago, we had a discussion about what poor people can and can't buy and how they shouldn't be buying cake. They should be buying broccoli, Mackey said. For the last several years, we had a line in the budget that helped poor people buy more broccoli, and you all zeroed it out. Mackey was referring to a bill passed by the House that would have directed the state social services department to apply for a federal waiver to bar SNAP purchases of sugary foods and drinks, similar to an executive order issued by Kehoe In October last year, the U.S. Department of Agriculture approved Missouri's waiver in December, and the bill did not advance in the Senate. House Budget Committee Chairman Dirk Deaton, that's a interesting name, a Seneca Republican, said that as general revenue dollars grow scarcer, programs without long track records of state funding are especially likely to be scrutinized. Lawmakers appropriated $2 million for Double Up food bucks in each of the past 2 budget years. If we've been doing it for 20 or 30 years, we need to look at that too, Deaton said. Maybe we don't need to do it anymore, but the newer something is, the more likely it is to come under scrutiny when we're having to pull back. Another proposal aimed at allowing the state's Medicaid program to pay for healthy food prescribed by doctors received initial bipartisan support in the House, but was made an optional part of a wide-ranging health care bill that went to the governor, responding to the argument that the bill was consistent with federal Make America Health Again initiatives, or MAHA. Republican State Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman of Arnold said the proposal was an example of people co-opting the MAHA movement to try to expand government. Paula Stocker, market manager at City Market in Kansas City, told the Independent Double Up food bucks translates to more sales for farmers and helps put locally grown nutritious food within reach of more families. It helps them stretch their grocery budgets in a very direct way. It means they're going home with real food and not junk, Stocker said. It's an overpowering experience for adult recipients and a fun one for kids, Stocker said, with parents passing out the bright purple tokens to their children. The parents will let them spend it on something like strawberries or apples or fruit, Stocker said. The kids get really excited that they get to shop with this really pretty money. Dan Shaw, executive director of the Missouri Grocers Association, told The Independent, the program also helps grocery stores increase customer loyalty and satisfaction. They get customer foot traffic in the store, and I think it makes the customers happy. And happy customers are going to be more receptive to buying stuff in that store. The program can also allow stores to stock fresher fruits and vegetables by increasing the amount of produce they sell. So this seems just like more red tape as well. They say, okay, well, no sugary stuff, none of the candy and soda and stuff. Okay, how about vegetables? Well, it just seems like when you call them on it, you're like, hey, wait a minute, something else seems to be going on here as well. More punishment?
The word broccoli popped out at me. Which Bush was it that famously hated broccoli?
That was
Bush Senior.
That was Herbert Walker. Yeah, I happen to love broccoli, but
maybe one of his acolytes was in on the markup.
Not a fan of broccoli. Don't like it at all. Not a fan.
The other possibility is that they ran the statute draft through AI and it hallucinated junk vegetables.
Yeah. Now you have to be careful with fruits because there is sugar in fruits too.
Yeah.
It's not just like, if you just eat fruits you're going to be fine, and so it's just one of those. It depends on the person, their diet, what they can take, what they can't. And to tell people that, well, maybe they need like soda in small doses, for their blood sugar or whatever. So it's not like they're sitting there just chugging a 3-liter and saying right there in the store. It's not nuanced, is what I'm saying.
Well, and the anti-junk food restrictions have included sugar-free sodas. So so it's not just about that. But the other thing is, as you pointed out, the utter hypocrisy. We're concerned about people spending their money on junk food, but we're also going to pull back on the programs that actually give people access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Now, fair enough, there's something about that going on in California that was possibly going to be cut in California. It was something that allowed people to, I think it was to double their food stamps at farmers markets. And, again, you have some of these, and I know in Chicago, we had some that actually allowed people to triple their food stamps at farmers markets, which worked out great for everybody. But that was happening. I knew somebody who many years ago, this was, I want to say probably in the 80s or 90s, was on food stamps back when you actually had the coupons. And the people would just go over everything that she would have for children. They would go over everything that was in her shopping cart. And if she bought fresh fruit, they would give her a hard time for that. As Chuck says, it's the cruelty is the point. This is you're going to find a way to be cruel here.
Since we were in Chicago in the 80s, if I may,
yeah.
My wife was a substance abuse counselor during that period, and the clinic used to get some government food. But are you both old enough to remember the phrase government cheese?
Oh, yes. The one that had the warnings on it?
I've had government cheese. Yeah.
Yeah. And the clinic was one of the past two places to hand that out. And they were never able to get rid of all of it. So we actually ended up with some of it in our fridge because it really literally was going to go. I mean, not lots of it, but yeah, it came in those big chunks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we ended up with a little of it because it literally was going to go bad because not enough of the clients and whatnot would take it. But the $64,000 question during that period, it was pointed out to me that, if they were doing that with, say, rice and beans, it would go a lot farther, feed people better, and a lot of the clients would even snap that up the way that the cheese, as good as it was, just wasn't grabbing it. There's always an element of whack-a-mole in this, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you find, and the more we try to micromanage what's going into the cart, the more things will get dysfunctional.
Yeah, the less whack-a-mole and more guacamole. See what I did there?
I saw what you did there.
Thank you. We all have four eyes, so we can see clearly my bullshit. But no, I remember the government cheese. I remember those. I remember the paper coupon. We had those when I was a little kid. Times were tough. Dad had lost his job. We had the big coupon booklet, and nobody said a word about sugary drinks. They just wouldn't let you do like non-food stuff, right? Which is what when you have usually food stamps, you have welfare that goes along with it. You get a welfare payment too, depending on your situation. The amounts vary. But that welfare money is what you pay for, like your cleaning supplies, stuff like that. I always thought that like toothpaste and toothbrushes, anything that for like oral, like to keep your mouth clean, should probably be under food stamps too. Soap too, right? As part of like a hygienic health thing, right? You're not buying soap because you're just trying to be fancy and own fancy soap. You're using the soap to clean yourself, to stay healthy.
And you touched on an excellent point. Nobody's ever gone at this effectively from the angle of holistic healthy families.
Yeah.
And that's food and hygiene. And weirdly enough, insurance companies are beginning to figure that out in the private sector. Every other year, my Medicare Advantage provider, which I won't name because I'm not in infomercials, but I get this benefit card where I can buy mouthwash and toothpaste and stuff insurance isn't going to cover. And occasionally some kinds of diet bars. I mean, I don't buy those, but they're there. Why haven't we done this and lower socioeconomic strata and just wired it all together?
Yeah. One thing I would say with food stamps, to be aware, that's under the Department of Agriculture. I mean, the program originally started to help support the American farmer, and so the non-food products becomes a thing because it's not technically food. I would like to see it, but I would like to see that sort of thing be subsidized as well.
It was a win-win. There were ulterior motives there. Let's prop up farm prices too, but there's no reason that USDA and FDA, or you're part of the alphabet soup here, can't talk to each other in theory.
Yeah. Well, that would be yes. I would like to see that.
Yeah, it would make too much sense to ever happen, but
yeah.
Well, speaking of high costs, looks like the cost of AI is starting to bite companies
This is
in
really
the
funny.
butt. You have these situations where a lot of people have been laid off and replaced with AI, and now it's like, oh, AI is expensive. What the French toast? Rising AI costs prompt companies to reassess adoption strategies. So when they found out it wasn't cheap, they're like, oh, wait a minute. Artificial intelligence is becoming increasingly expensive, prompting companies to reassess how they use the technology as the industry moves beyond its rapid growth phase. And following the launch of ChatGPT, AI companies adopted a familiar Silicon Valley strategy, offering services at low prices to attract users and gain market share. The old digital bait and switch. Kevin Simbach of startup incubator Delphi Labs described the period as one of subsidized intelligence, with with investors effectively covering costs so companies could provide AI services at discount rates. But the tides are beginning to turn, Simbach said, arguing that the major AI firms are now under growing pressure to generate profits as industry leaders such as OpenAI and Anthropic seek to go public and attract retail investors later this year. Industry analysts say one of the main factors behind rising costs is the growing use of AI agents. Unlike traditional chatbots that primarily answer questions, AI agents can perform tasks such as scheduling appointments, writing software code, and managing files. Learn to code, bro. Remember hearing that? These systems require significantly more computing power because a single task may involve multiple agents operating simultaneously, hence the giant, 50 square mile data centers you're starting to see pop up all over the place. Although that may not be for that in general. There's a James Lee video that just popped out where it was saying these data centers may primarily be for surveillance. But if you haven't seen that video, I highly advise you to check it out. It's pretty good. Pretty scary, I should say. AI companies typically charge customers based on tokens, the units used to measure and process information. Tasks involving AI agents can consume many times more tokens than standard chat box interactions. Oh, wow. So we're going back to the old 80s video arcade method of using, they stopped using quarters in the arcades and they started giving you tokens. So that's what that reminded me of. I'm old too, by the way. At the same time, demand for the computer chips and data centers needed to support AI applications continues to outpace supply, increasing costs around the industry. Womp, womp, womp. We're going to save so much money. Oh, shit, they're starting to charge us now. What the French? Especially in developer circles, the cost to use AI for nothing, like coding, has grown exponentially, said Mark Barton of technology consultancy Omniux. All the costs are really starting to skyrocket, he added. Some companies have become so reliant on AI that analysts have coined the term token maxing to describe excessive use of token-based services. In some cases, people are seeing the cost of tokens exceed the cost of the employee within a month or two of use just because they're using it too much, said analyst Jack Gold of J. Gold Associates. Even Meta, which earlier this year encouraged employees to use as many AI tokens as possible as a measure of productivity, has begun to reconsider its approach. Nobody should be using AI tools just for the sake of using them, Chief Technology Officer Andrew Bosworth wrote in a memo to employees, according to the Wall Street Journal. We'll just replace those people with AI and your problem will be solved, right? Uber's chief operating officer also questioned whether heavy spending on AI had delivered measurable productivity gains. To reduce expenses, some companies are turning to free open source AI models that can be downloaded and operated independently. While generally less powerful than leading commercial products such as ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude, they are often sufficient for specific business needs. Others are adopting smaller, specialized AI models tailored to industries such as real estate or finance instead of relying on large general-purpose systems. Companies are also increasingly dividing complex AI tasks into smaller components and assigning each task to the least expensive model capable of completing it. The big, large, monolithic model, it's $15 per million tokens, but you can get that down to like 5 cents if you use the smaller mini model, said Adrian Balfour of consultancy and Verso. Analysts say these trends suggest AI may increasingly resemble a commodity market where cost efficiency and suitability becomes more important than using the most advanced model available. However, experts caution that demand for cutting-edge AI systems is unlikely to disappear. The most advanced users will continue to pay for the highest performing models, said John Belton, a portfolio manager at Gabelli Funds. It's a growing pie, he added. Right? So you have these companies like Uber and some of these, maybe not Uber, but like some of these other companies, they're just totally going AI, and maybe now they're starting to feel like they got sold a bill of goods.
Yeah.
And maybe the humans might be actually cheaper. Yeah. Isn't that crazy how that works out?
They're doing things like telling their employees, yeah, use this AI, put this on your phone. We want you to use this AI. And then they're coming back a month later and saying, we're going to have to limit the amount of tokens you have for this. As a matter of fact, I was had a job, and I was working with a model that had been recommended by the owner of the company, and we were using it, and then all of a sudden they stopped giving away all this stuff for free, and if you have to top off your account every month. I mean, you're paying for the model itself, then you top off the account if you start doing more stuff than it wants you to do with that original amount. And it's happening all over the place. You get used to these tools. Maybe you've outsourced your stuff to AI, but then all of a sudden you're finding that your AIs can't do what you need them to do without you paying them a lot more money. And then if you're asking your employees to use AI to solve their everyday job issues, and they're finding they can't use the tools, but they can't necessarily go back because people who were doing some of this work for them originally, they're no longer with the company.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like crack dealers, right? The crack dealer will give you they'll give you a little crack rock first, let you sample it, let you get addicted to it, and then now you got to pay for it. That's how that works. And it's the same thing with the AI companies too. Like a lot of these people thought, oh, my cost-cutting dreams are going to come true. I could lay off all thousands of people and just replace them with AI. And then it turns out the humans that you still do have at the company are using that AI to the hilt for all kinds of things, right? They're using it for advanced search engines. They're getting them to write papers for them, like maybe like professional papers or something, or some sort of reports and stuff. It's basically taking the humans are basically just giving all the jobs to these AI things. And it's like, well, as they say in the government, how you gonna pay for it? How you gonna pay for it? Shit ain't free, right? Gas, it was the gas, grass, or ass. Nobody rides for free. And a lot of these, they're just now starting to bite these companies in the butt. Do you think there's gonna be a big turnaround, or we're gonna see a renaissance of hiring humans again?
Well, like Ron Popeil once said, but wait, there's more. But I'm going to start with a personal anecdote. I was at a conference in Austin a couple months ago, and I ordered an Uber to go back to the airport at the close of it. Austin has a certain coterie of AI driverless Ubers. And you can't tell when you're ordering whether you're going to get a human or a bot. I kept getting these prompts from the Uber driver. I'm approaching, and I actually saw some of the bots go by because they had this little spinning top on top of the vehicle. Wow. Anyway, I kept getting these prompts. I'm coming. No, that sounds like a porno, doesn't it? Anyway, it tells me it arrived. I said, where? Because I'm looking around for the driver's license. I'm here, da-da-da-da, nowhere. So one of the car hops walks up to me and says, can I help you? I tell him what's going on. Oh, they probably went to the wrong Marriott. That happens all the time. So I reorder it and I eventually get a human about 20 minutes later. But now on to the main course. AI has infiltrated the professions and the legal professions specifically. A lot of that process. The state of Florida just a day or two ago requires human certification now with penalty if you fail of all your citations because there was an endemic of AI hallucinations. Sometimes cases that didn't exist, sometimes the case existed, but the citation was either false or irrelevant. And it made it to the Florida Supreme Court, which normally I would not cite as a font of forward-thinking wisdom. If even they got fed up, then this is the canary in the coal mine, tip the iceberg, call it what you will. And that means you're still going to have those smelly humans looking at what AI did. And that was just in the legal profession alone. Wait till it hits medical. Wait till it hits everything where people actually care about the quality of the work product. That ROI with massive reductions in force ain't coming. What we're going to see is going to be a little more like the tech bubble in the 90s. It would be unfair to call this vaporware. It would be fair to call it does not perform as hyped and advertised. In fact, I just put the link to an article about the Florida decision in your studio chat for your enjoyment later.
Thank you.
You're always bringing us treats, Bill. We appreciate that.
We do.
You're a good Uncle Bill.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that's something definitely we're going to be keeping an eye on as this progresses, and more people are starting to stand up against these data centers too in their communities. So again, I encourage people, if you haven't seen the James Lee video, he just dropped it a few days ago. He's talking about these data centers and how they may actually be used for surveillance, which is quite possible. Too.
One of the good things that's happening here in the Who's Your Heartline is that there's a bit of a groundswell against our elephant riding state government that wants to fund these things to the hilt because Neo Caligula said so. But the local communities are starting to rise up against that to their credit.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the sound alone of these places, just the noise in these communities alone is what people driving. I mean that you add that to the higher utility bills for electricity and water in their neighborhood. You know, we talked about a couple weeks ago about this community in Nevada that's going to lose their power service because the power company is going to be providing for a data center exclusively. And 50,000 people in your town. Well, too bad, so sad. Go get some solar panels, pray to your sun god, whatever. But we're out. We're out 5,000 with a sunroof.
When it will really hit the fan is if and when voters ever connect. My electric bill just went up 20%, so that Acme Corporation gets a 15% stock bump by way of reducing its labor force.
Which never sees its way come back into the community, by the way.
Right. So if the voters ever connect all those dots, there's something waiting to blow up there. So far though, I don't see enough voices out there that are starting to draw the picture.
Yeah, there's some, but it's like we got to get people out of these bubbles. That's why we do these shows like this to try to provide information to people where it's like, look, you know, we're not pushing some agenda. These are the facts.
Yeah,
right? And you need to know.
Yeah, and the facts are that data center drives up your electric bill. But where it goes is this company over here that can lay off 10% of its workforce and get a stock bump. And that's why your electric bill went up, so that you can help them do that.
Yes, you're being a good neighbor. Eyes rolling if you're just listening to this. Let's move on and talk about something good and talk about the Pope giving a shout out to radio. How about that? The holy airwaves, as you were. Safeguarding radio, a bastion of freedom and pluralism. This is from Vatican News there. The Digital Networks Act is currently under discussion at the European level, aimed at regulating the continent's communication and information landscape for the years ahead. The European Broadcasting Union stresses the urgency of not sacrificing radio's role in the digital age. The presence of radio receivers in automobiles is considered essential. Even today, despite the technological revolution brought about by AI, radio remains the medium most trusted by European citizens as a source of information. It's a value that stands as a guardian of freedom, serving pluralism and the democratic system. This is the view expressed by Alessandro Gassotti, Deputy Director of Vatican Media and Vatican Radio's representative to the European Broadcasting Union, where he also serves as president of the Radio and Audio News Group. Speaking to Luca Collodi during the Vatican Radio program Sound Magazine, Gassotti reflects on the ongoing European debate surrounding the Digital Networks Act, DNA, interesting, the new overarching telecommunications regulation for the continent. A key priority for the EBU, he explains, is ensuring that radio broadcasters remain fully accessible, starting with automobiles. The Digital Networks Act is currently being debated at the European level. Okay, so I guess this is a question. A regulation that will reshape the continent's digital communications landscape for years to come. Why does it matter so much for our future? The DNA is a legislative proposal by the European Union that aims to redefine digital communications across the continent, taking into account the extraordinary technological innovations of recent years, beginning with AI. The goal is to establish a unified regulatory framework. Currently, the field is governed by a patchwork of different rules and directives that is as up-to-date as possible. It matters because it concerns not only digital infrastructure, connectivity, and broadband networks, but will also have an impact on the news content that European citizens will be able to read, watch, and listen to in the years ahead. When we think about it carefully, this is fundamentally a question that touches the health of our democratic systems as well. The DNA is expected to be adopted next year. In the coming months, a lengthy and complex discussion is unfolding within European institutions, particularly the Commission, Parliament, and the Council of the EU. This is a highly significant phase as the debate involves not only national governments and parliaments, but also media outlets, especially public service broadcasters, telecommunication operators, and of course, the major tech companies of the digital world. One of the key issues under discussion is the continued presence of radio in automobiles. One is the European Broadcasting Union, of which Vatican Radio is a founding member, calling for this in regard. So one of the central points of the current debate concerns precisely the presence of radios in cars. In April, during the Radio Assembly of Europe in Sofia, which I attended on behalf of Vatican Radio, we agreed that as the EBU, we must firmly advocate for the Digital Networks Act to mandate that automobile manufacturers maintain integrated terrestrial radio receivers in all new cars sold in the European Union. To this end, at both the national and European levels, public radio broadcasters are working to raise awareness among institutions, business leaders, and civil society in support of the initiative known as Radio Ready. And again, they're talking about what radio technology should be guaranteed in automobiles. According to the EBU's proposed amendment, cars should be capable of receiving both analog and digital terrestrial radio. This means ensuring the availability of FM and digital, DAB, DAB plus technologies. Drawing also on his experience as president of the Radio and Audio News Group of Europe, he says that European countries currently employ a range of distribution strategies. Some still make extensive use of FM, while others are increasingly shifting towards DAB+. For this reason, European regulation should account for this diversity, ensuring technological inclusivity and guaranteeing that all users can listen to the radio in their cars, regardless of which country they are in. So, as we've mentioned before, Trump is actually on board with this in the United States. And, of course, the Pope saying that, chiming in and saying, yeah, we should definitely keep these radios in cars like that. And I tend to agree, too, that because it's more like a more convenient ham radio in a sense, right? You know, where before the internet, people were talking to each other on ham radios and whatnot. And to have that information from even in like you're going to see more and more independent sources in radio as well. And to be able to hear their news and their voices and whatnot is going to be key too, especially when you're in the car.
Yeah, you've been hearing me talk about this for a while now. John Kemper asked this question. Yes, as a matter of fact, and Teslas were actually being manufactured without the capacity to have a radio. And then Ford, back in 2023, announced that it was going to eliminate, I believe it was AM radio, the AM band, I think it was, or radio out of their cars. There was a huge public outcry, and they backed off on that. But there has been a long-standing movement that's been going on for a while to keep radio in cars, particularly as a public safety vehicle, I guess you would say, particularly given that the primary entry point system, which is part of the emergency broadcasting system that essentially hardens some designated stations throughout the country against even a nuclear war if necessary, so they can continue to transmit information, that the backbone of it is AM radio. And so there's been this move to keep AM radio in vehicles. Ted Cruz and Ed Markey crossed the aisle, sponsored a bill. It languished for a while. Chuck Schumer just held on to it, but now it's back, and they're trying to get this moved through. So it's very essential. I just thought it was nice to hear that the Vatican is all behind this as well. And that's not just because I really like radio, it's my favorite medium. It is a very democratic medium, and it gives people access to news, information, and culture at a relatively in a very easy way. But in cars, it becomes even more important. It's not like a ham radio or a CB radio where it's not going two ways, but you can get information, particularly if you're driving around, that information is not as easily accessed sometimes through your cell phone. Because if the towers go down, the power goes down, something like that happens, you're not necessarily going to have that access. So that's why there's been this push to keep radio in cars, as some car manufacturers have tried to take it out. And this is apparently a concern over in Europe as well as it is here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Bill?
Oh my, so many moving parts. To begin with, the shout out to the Vatican, which, by the way, has its own shortwave station and always has. It's a shell of its former self, but it's still there. So God bless them for that. Europe is a crazy quilt of who's using what. And some countries have already turned off part of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So there's the tree in the forest thing going on in cases like Norway, and Switzerland is still having an argument with itself about where it's going to go. But it's complicated. Things are a little simpler in the U.S., but simple's not always easy. Right across the river from me at Purdue, they are testing a stretch of road experimentally that will supposedly charge electric cars as you're driving over it. I have not yet wandered over with the radio. I do write a column for a radio journal, and I'm very curious to see about whether it fuzzes out the high frequency bands. I suspect it probably does. Driving around town here, a more endemic thing that's already happening is that a lot of the nodes for upgrading Wi-Fi systems are noisy. They give off a lot of what's called RFI, radio frequency interference. And even some cars are designed in such a way that it is, in fact, one of our watchers correctly pointed out that as the Teslas were originally designed, they really aren't mutually compatible with radio.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to clash with each other as far as spectrum goes. So I love radio, love to see them in cars. But if we keep them in cars and everything else happens, actually going back in time, even while I still lived in Chicago, there were some AM channels that I would have been able to receive in the 80s that I no longer could in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. Not because they weren't transmitting. They didn't reduce their power. There was just too much RFI going on in the neighborhood. So addressing the cars in isolation is a feel-good, but if we don't attack the broader issue of RFI, mm-hmm. it's ultimately going to end up in the same place. You can turn your set on, but nothing to listen to here except...
Yeah. I know that, and I'm going to go back and grab some stuff from when I was working for Radio Inc. But there are ways of protecting the radio transmission. It's supposed to be there. It doesn't add that much, but I can get the exact details and specs and bring it back over here. Also, just for what it's worth, FCC regulation, I think it's Part 15, requires automobile manufacturers to allow for reception in the cars. So it's not been well enforced. The FCC has its own special problems right now. But I'm going to get the further details because there are details on that have been addressed and are being addressed. I'm going to go find those and bring it back to the show.
Yeah, including the FCC is a little understaffed right now, but.
Oh, don't get me started. Oh, don't get me started.
And just so people know, the Vatican radio station is WPOP. That's right. It's Pope Radio. Holy See. How about Holy Here? It's radio. There's no seeing stuff. So speaking of overseas, we're going to get to our next segment here. The man of war stings, and of course, war everywhere. Peace sells, but who's buying? Doesn't seem like anybody is these days. As neck deep in the Lebanese mud, Israel in meltdown after Netanyahu cancels Beirut strikes. Oh, I bet he felt really bad about that. Israeli media outlets and officials have erupted in anger over Trump's unilateral ceasefire announcement between Hezbollah and Israel, with settlers from the north complaining that they remain ducks in a shooting range. Maybe you should probably get out of their country. Just saying. From the chaos in the streets to the Lebanese mud, Israel appears to be a country where every action dictates terms to it. Haredim at home, Hezbollah from outside, and Trump above them all, wrote Ma'ariv newspaper's Avi Ashkenazi yesterday. In a proper, serious country, several things would have happened this morning. The prime minister and the government would have resigned and gone home, and the Air Force would have continued a wave of strikes throughout Lebanon, a campaign that should have begun yesterday at 9 a.m. and continued uninterrupted until Hezbollah raised a white flag, he added. He also slammed the ultra-Orthodox community, the Haredim, and lamented that troops and reservists are bearing the burden of the war. But we do not live in a proper country. This is the state of Israel, where every troublemaker can do whatever he wants and impose new rules on the state. This happens both from within and from outside. Ashkenazi wrote that Netanyahu's announcement on Monday to strike the Lebanese capital was a maneuver. Netanyahu's fear of Donald Trump is greater than the pressure he faces from residents of northern Israel and from public outrage over the fact that soldiers are currently sitting like ducks in a shooting range in Lebanon. And the military, despite it being summer, remains stuck neck deep in the Lebanese mud, Ashkenazi went on to say. Israeli news outlets Walla also cited security sources saying that Tel Aviv's backtracking on striking Beirut undermined the Israeli occupation in South Lebanon, and that this has strengthened ties between Hezbollah and Iran by linking the two theaters. One security source was quoted as saying that refraining from striking Beirut harms Israel's efforts to sever the connection between Hezbollah and Tehran, which Israeli officials view as the central objective of the war. However, the source added that the army is ready to carry out an attack on Beirut if the political leadership approves it. Members of the opposition and the ruling coalition both slammed the decision not to strike Beirut. Opposition leader Yair Lapid described Israel as a protectorate state of the U.S., while Avigdor Lieberman complained that we are not a banana republic. More like a hot topic, see, because we're talking about mall stores there. Dahi must be flattened now, and we must not stop until the last building there has been brought down. According to Lieberman, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett also accused the government of losing control of Israeli sovereignty, while National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir urged Netanyahu to reject U.S. pressure and proceed with attacks on Hezbollah. You said that a strong prime minister tells the president of the U.S. yes when possible and no when necessary. This is the time to tell our friend, President Trump, no. Now is the time to do what is required and necessary to strike Hezbollah, to unleash the hands of our fighters, and to restore security of the North, Ben-Gvir said. According to the Haaretz newspaper, the threats to attack Beirut were hollow even before the U.S. intervention. Now, a lot of people will say, well, yeah, the United States is a puppet of Israel, but that may be the case in a lot of situations. But the United States is the money man, right? They're the bag man. And in the end, if Trump doesn't like what you're doing, it doesn't matter who it is, he's going to come after you. Like there was allegedly there was a phone call between him and Netanyahu where Trump said, you're fucking crazy. What the hell's wrong with you? And I don't know. Do you think that you guys think that honeymoon is over? What do you think is going to change after this?
Not
everybody at once.
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to the next thing going boom, and we'll see how that happens. If they want a distraction. That's what I was thinking. Like when you were reading this thing, it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought we were the puppets of Israel, and it's.
There is a very legitimate question as to how much of this was performative versus Trump has actually had enough. And even if Neo Caligula had enough, there's still all of these people in back of him to remind him, wait a minute, including, I know this is becoming a hobby horse of mine, but his chief of staff used to advise who. This guy who's currently the prime minister of Israel. So he's got a lot to unplug there to really tell Bibi, basta ya, that's enough, no more of this, and actually make it stick. On Netanyahu's part, we fixate sometimes so much on the Epstein files and Trump that we forget that Netanyahu has problems of his own. And the moment everything quiets down, no more war, no more need for him to be hero of the day. Not only do all of these corruption questions move forward and come home to roost, but there's kind of a 9/11-ish question of it's not a conspiracy theory or anybody's national secret that Israel was funding Hamas kind of halfway under the table for years before the October attacks. Why? Because keeping the Palestinians divided kept them from being more effective at demanding a unified state. Now, the October attacks came at a really, I'm not saying that the October attacks were dummied up in order to push that aside, but that question was already kind of hanging there like a bad pierogi. Everything calms down. Eventually, the media that are giving Netanyahu a pass on certain things are going to come back and look at that. Especially if all that Israel ended up with was bombed out next door territories and exhausted military. And their Iron Dome has been proven not to be the magic talisman. that was originally advertised. And leaving it, even if one ignores the degree of censorship that's happening in Israeli news about how much damage there has been, the fact that we have had to ship so much of our own ordnance to defend Israel, and we used a lot of THAADs and other stuff to make sure that Tel Aviv and other cities didn't turn into rubble. That raises questions about the Iron Dome too. So if you're Netanyahu and you know what's coming toward you on the day after, are you in any hurry to wrap things up? This is a guy who's backed into a corner, in his own mind at least. If anything, I would expect things to get crazier.
Well, yeah, I mean, this whole thing is keeping him out of court too for
yes,
you know, all the charges that are against him, and Trump's trying to get him pardoned, you know, trying to get Herzog, the president, to pardon him and stuff. And it's like,
yeah, don't know what he did yet, but whatever it is, give him a buy, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's Israeli. We have to protect our own. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Iron Dome, and of course, one of the country that actually exploited its weakness was Iran, sending basically not junk, but lesser expensive drones and missiles and stuff at it. Meanwhile, the Iron Dome is putting out all these missiles to knock those out of the sky, and those missiles are expensive. So they basically used up the Iron Dome, and then they brought in the hypersonics, and you know, kind of shifting to Iran now, as you know, Trump really he doesn't know what to do with Iran either. He thought that, like I said, this was going to be over in a few days. They kill their leader, they're going to bring in some puppet, and then it's business as usual with the United States. But lo and behold, that didn't happen, and here we are in June now. And they're still in talks. They're still the Strait of Hormuz is still in flux too. As informed Iranian source says, the draft memo is still under review in Tehran, I guess for a treaty or some sort of peace treaty. An informed source told Iran's Mehr news agency on Tuesday that the final draft of a potential memorandum of understanding related to Iran is still under discussion in Tehran, and no response has been issued yet. This is regarding their nuclear program. The source said that the U.S.'s bad history of not keeping its promises has prompted Iran to deal with the issue very cautiously, noting that Iran, based on its past experiences, seeks to achieve real gains. And that's just Iran alone. I'm pretty sure they are paying attention to the fuckery that the United States has done with other countries too. He added, the U.S. is worried about the war, and we are concerned about the agreement because the U.S. spent a lot on the war and did not achieve success. The source stressed that Iran's basis in the agreement is a system of mechanisms that ensure tangible and reversible implementation procedures, reflecting Tehran's continued emphasis on establishing guarantees in any potential agreement with the U.S., particularly in light of past disputes over compliance and implementation, and of course, the U.S. going back on their word time and time again. According to the same source, Iran's negotiating approach is shaped by its previous experiences in international agreements with a focus on ensuring practical and enforceable outcomes. The emphasis on tangible and reversible implementation procedures highlights Tehran's demand for structured mechanisms within any future agreement. On that note, Saeed Ajroui, a member of the media team for the Iranian negotiating delegation, said on Monday that Iran has rejected the transfer of Iranian nuclear materials to the U.S. in the initial phase of talks, adding that the issue of transferring this material was not mentioned in the latest draft the U.S. sent. In the first stage of the negotiations, the Americans were demanding the transfer of Iranian nuclear materials to America, a demand that was not accepted, he said. He noted that Washington has since modified its position, and according to the latest textual amendment sent by the U.S., the issue of transferring or disposing of materials is no longer on the table. In the latest textual amendment sent by America, the issue of transferring or disposing of materials is not mentioned. Instead, it has sufficed with references to phrases such as determining the status or the fate of the materials or resolving the matter of the materials, he explained. And this goes on here to discuss this more, but basically, Iran is very, very careful because they know the history of the United States dealings with other countries, including their own, and are not just going to like just give up all their nuclear material, their nuclear program, any of that stuff. When they themselves hold the high card in this situation, right? Yeah, they have been devastated by bombs, but they are still intact, and they've been preparing for several decades for this to happen. So, I mean, this is basically the will of Iran versus Trump's ego. And I think this war is going to keep on going for until either Trump gets impeached and convicted, or till the end of his term, and God knows who's going to be next to pick up the mantle after that.
I don't blame Iran for taking its time at all, but I've made that very clear.
Iran has nothing to gain from easing up and a lot of stuff to lose. And Warren, I think you're right. I think this is going to go pretty much forever. Trump's only real play is declare victory and go home.
Yeah.
That's really the only play he has. There are too many people behind him, including that pesky country we want to integrate our military with, that aren't going to let the go home part happen.
No.
But
especially if that integration happens. Once that happens, that's it. They are neck deep themselves. But please continue.
Yeah, and if that happens, I think we as American voters are entitled to consider our senators and representatives that voted for it as actual honest-to-God traitors in the constitutional sense of the term.
I mean, this has nothing to do with we got to keep nuclear weapons away from Iran. That has nothing to do with it. That's the cover story. For Trump personally, this seems like now, and with his actions that's been going on since this happened, he's been manipulating the markets, and he's been making money off.
Yeah, they've turned war into war for fun and profit in a way that their predecessors could only dream of. The previous Ayatollah that we offed had declared a fatwa against obtaining nuclear weapons. And a fatwa is not a political speech like our politicians make here. A fatwa is serious stuff. You are committing blasphemy against Allah if you go do this. Mm-hmm. And the fatwa said Iran will not have nuclear weapons. And we killed the guy. And now it's his son there, and even his son has not yet revoked the fatwa, but he's not in a hurry to give up what they have either.
Yeah, I think politically it would, especially since he's brand new now, it wouldn't be prudent to redact the fatwa from, it's too soon for that. It seems like they're not getting nuclear weapons either way at this point, but that doesn't mean now with this new guy in charge that they won't, especially when they see how nobody messes with North Korea because they have a nuclear weapon, and that idea may get into his mind if it's not already there. And the whole Streisand effect. If they had just left Iran alone, they probably never would have had a nuclear weapon. And now that they've killed off the people that don't want it, now you're probably going to get a nuclear weapon probably within the next 5 to 10 years, depending on what happens with this war. So crazy stuff, man. But again, Trump has turned this into a game. I don't know if he knew this going in or not, or maybe he just figured it out once the war started that he could manipulate the markets just by saying, "Oh, we're talking peace," and then things get lower. "Oh, we're going to war. This time I mean it," and then the prices go up, down, or whatever. And it's very open. It's very transparent what he's doing. This isn't like, he's sneaking around. People are saying this online, just like even people who are not even business minded people, like he's he's manipulating the markets. So
Yeah, and there's something even more insidious behind that in a way. So much trading on the markets now is algorithmic that not only is it being manipulated, but somebody has apparently cracked the code on how to excite the machines, if you like. Because there is absolutely nothing objectively happening in the world right now that justifies the Dow being over 50. There's not. All the indicators are in the other direction.
Yeah, definitely.
And a lot of what happened was not done directly by human hands. But the algorithms are eating information. And they are probably absorbing a lot of Neo-Caligula's public statements non-critically. Because they're not wired to say, oh, he's lying again.
It's the he's the leader of the free world. Of course, his word is going to, cause some sort of reaction in the markets, right? That's what the
but the fact that this can happen that vigorously is itself something disturbing, I think.
Yeah,
and not just for the current POTUS.
Right. Yeah.
There's a long-term bit of badness waiting to succeed him on that score.
Yeah, he may have intentionally or unintentionally set a precedent there. Let's we're kind of running out of time here, but we'll get to the press pool here. I thought this is a pretty important story, especially after what has happened at CBS being taken over by basically David Ellison. I think that's Larry Ellison's son. CBS is under that umbrella. So, oops, what happened?
While you're looking for it, Andy Borowitz did a little thing about Barry Weiss leaving CBS to manage North Korea's media.
Indeed. Scott Pelley from CBS 60 Minutes fired. So he says CBS told him to inject falsehoods into reporting. Interesting. Too bad you didn't say that earlier when you had that nice cushy job there, Scotty. The longtime 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley, who was fired by CBS News Tuesday after clashing with the network's new management, issued a public statement accusing the network's new executives of silencing employees and claiming they instructed him to inject falsehoods and bias into his reporting. 60 has been the #1 program in America for decades because our beloved audience finds integrity, quality, and humanity in our stories. At least they used to. Pelley wrote in the lengthy statement he shared on social media today, when stewardship of the program passed to my colleagues and me, our responsibility was to expand energetically into a new age of media technology while preserving the values of our audience experts. Now, the new owner of our network is casting this legend aside, apparently to curry a moment of favor with the Trump administration. Pelley criticized the new leadership at CBS, adding, last month, 60 Minutes lost its DNA when our entire senior leadership and 2 of our best on-air correspondents were cruelly fired without cause. Good people were silenced because they stood up for our audience. They stood for fairness against the forces of political bias. They stood for professionalism against chaos. For my part, my new management has instructed me to inject falsehoods and bias into a politically sensitive story. I've been told to include assertions that are unverified. To date, in every case, I've managed to ignore these instructions or refuse them. Recently, politicians have been invited to choose correspondents for interviews on the broadcast. Giving politicians control over 60 Minutes interviews is not how this is done. Finally, incompetence and unprofessionalism in the new management have wreaked havoc. In a case involving one of my stories, the entire program came within 19 minutes of not getting on the air at all. He concluded his statement by saying that he was departing after 37 years at CBS with one emotion, a heart brimming with gratitude for the men and women of CBS News who encouraged and enriched my work, very often at the risk of their own lives. I pray for a day when those people and their ideals are honored again. A day when sanity, competence, and courage return. CBS News did not immediately respond to the Guardian's request for comment about the statement. Barry Weiss addressed Pelley's termination on the network's morning call on Wednesday. She said, I know I speak for myself, and I hope I speak for everyone here when I say that I'm only interested in working in a newsroom that is built on trust and mutual respect. We cannot do our work without it. That foundation was broken on Monday, and despite our attempts to engage with Scott Pelley and to find a way back, unfortunately, we weren't able to do so, and so we had to part ways, Weiss said, according to an audio recording of the meeting obtained by The Guardian. We do not want that to happen, but that's the path he chose. That unfortunate outcome does not discount from the amazing contributions and work that Scott Pelley has done for CBS and for 60 Minutes over the course of his career. So Scott Pelley finally got his lion's heart, but he had to get fired to do it. I think I'm like, okay, yeah, he's able to tell people what's going on behind the scenes at CBS, which is all well and good. But if he was an actual real journalist, he would have been doing that before and gotten fired for it and making a big stink about it. But he did not do that. So as someone who worked in journalism, that's my take on it. I'm like, yeah, better late than never. But still, people needed to know this stuff about CBS and other media outlets, too, that are doing the same thing, much sooner than this.
It is, there's more that I'd like to talk about with what's happened with the demise of CBS Radio News, which is its own special kind of something. 60 Minutes, it's been the weekly program of record, a news program of record in the country. It's happening before our very eyes. And that is really distressing to see. It's nice that he's speaking up now, but I don't even know where we go from here. I really don't. I'd like to.
Well, if that didn't piss you off, this might. In troubling escalation against free press, Pentagon bans reporters from Public Affairs Office. How about that? This is kind of an ongoing thing too.
It's been going on.
The Trump administration's asinine attempts to silence objective journalism hit a new low, said one press freedom advocate late Monday, after the Pentagon announced that the U.S. Department of Defense would mark its press office as a classified area. Classified press. That's an oxymoron, because the press is supposed to give you the information. You can't classify the whole press office. That's bullshit. Banning journalists from the space where they previously talked openly with DoD officials. Reporters on the military are currently largely banned from the building altogether as litigation is ongoing over the administration's requirement that journalists have an escort to move about the Pentagon, but the new policy means that they should be able to return. They would be even more limited in their access to public affairs officers whose job it is to keep the press and public informed, or at least keep them propagandized more accurately. For multiple administrations, Pentagon reporters have used the press office to meet with public affairs officers and have open conversations about what America's armed services are doing in order to keep the public informed, said Ben Grozda, an advocacy manager for Reporters Without Borders North America, calling Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth petulant and pointing to his unsuccessful demand that journalists sign loyalty pledges. Grozda added that journalists will continue their tenacious reporting and hold the Pentagon accountable for the money, operations, and lives they impact every day. The Washington Post reported that Pentagon speechwriters will be moved into the Public Affairs Office, which will be equipped with the secret Internet Protocol Router Network, or SIPRNet, which is used to transmit classified information. This is the most transparent War Department in history. No amount of spin from the fake news media will change that. The Pentagon Press Office has been redesignated as a sensitive compartmented information facility due to speechwriters from the Office of the Secretary of War sharing the facility, said Jose Valdez, the acting Defense Department press secretary, on social media on Monday, referring to Hegseth by the title he prefers. Yada, yada, yada. There's more stuff there, but basically it's more keeping the press out of the military's business, because when you do that, you can get away with all kinds of, fuckery, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that's been going on. I mean, that with the Pentagon and the press, that's been going on. This is getting just cooked up even more.
Considering Kegseth's track record with keeping secret conversations actually secret, maybe we'll get more information. Who knows? No, I'm being being facetious here, of course. But
these guys ain't exactly the sharpest knives in the drawer, Bill. So that may actually happen by accident, but it may actually happen.
That's the one saving grace. They're so bad they aren't even very good at being bad. That's cold. That's cold comfort for those of us who actually like news. Our conundrum is, if everything is turning into CBS, how much does having better domestic access matters? To be perfectly honest, U.S.-based news is becoming an increasingly. I mean, I watch it to see what my fellow Americans are being fed, but it's becoming an increasingly smaller part of my diet, except as applies to state and local things.
I get a lot. We get a lot of our stuff, Warren, either from smaller outlets or non-American outlets. A fair amount of what the news we share on the show. That's the way we approach it. I try to get out of the U.S. bubble. That's not true about everything, certainly. And there's certain perspectives I find interesting. When it comes to stuff that's hyper local, you pretty much have to, look at that. But I've increasingly become more of a fan of the international press, even when it comes to specifically American news.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
It's kind of like those mouthwash commercials your best friends won't tell you.
No, they'll tell me. I can brush your teeth, you stank ass. We are running incredibly long, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip ahead, if that's okay.
That's absolutely cool. Yeah.
Yeah. We can always, some of these we can save till next
week. Next week is fine. Yeah.
Okay. So let's get to the end here, where we can finally have something nice to talk about, which is you guys have heard of Stonehenge, right? You know, that thing that was in that movie. This
Spinal Tap.
Yeah. That was the thing. It's a weird phenomenon where, if you don't know, for cities, they'll have like Manhattan Henge and there's Chicago Henge, which is great. It's mostly cities that have like these long east-west avenues or streets or whatever. And then when the sun at a certain time in the season, you have the sun just perfectly sets right between that corridor of buildings, and it's just a very cool effect. I always like that, seeing that in New York when I lived there, and it happens here in Chicago too. So this just happened in Manhattan last week, I believe. So what to know about Manhattan Henge, NYC's sunset spectacle. So there it is right there, and it really does give off this cool effect of especially when you see it on video, it's one thing, but when you actually see it happening, it's pretty wild. You know, you can understand why the Mayans and the Aztecs back in the day were like, the sun, it's crazy. We better worship it. New York City residents and visitors looked up to the sky to experience a phenomenon twice a year known as Manhattan Henge. The setting sun was framed by a canyon of skyscrapers on Thursday as it sunk below the horizon, perfectly aligned with the Manhattan street grid. The dramatic spectacle was just the first of the year. Another version of the setting sun is possible between New York's famed skyscrapers. Coming up on July 11th to 12th, when it repeats again. Manhattan Head happens about 3 weeks before and after the summer solstice. Over the years, it's become a must-see event. And like we said, that happens in Chicago too. And I got a little information there. So we just had one in late March, from March 20th to the 23rd. The next one will be in September here, the 19th to the 22nd. So if you're in the Chicagoland area, particularly downtown Chicago, check that out. Especially if you're into things like the sun, that warms us and could potentially kill us with waves of radioactivity. We love the sun around here. Good times. Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the show. Want to leave you with something not so disheartening.
Well, last week it was all about guacamole, and this week it's about the sun. So there you go.
That's right. But this week we went from whack-a-mole to guacamole, and it was delicious, and it was fun for me to do that. So, Bill, do you got anything coming up for yourself? Anything going on with you?
I think we talked about my shows for the month last week, so no.
Yes, indeed.
Well, actually, this won't happen immediately, but the guest I have coming up, I loved his album so much we got to talking, and I'm going to do some liner notes on it for a repackaging of the product. So that's Hugo Cruz and Figure It Out. Gratuitous musical plug.
There you go. Well, that's
liner notes, man. That takes me back.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there are people hiding in nooks and crannies that still read the things.
What is this? Read? You're talking about? Is that what words in front of your eyes, and then
learn about who you were listening to and why they wrote what they did. All that,
right on.
All that stuff that gets lost on Apple Music. So.
Well, I know, Lainey, you are in town, and we will be seeing you in person this weekend, which would be good to see you.
It'd be great to see you and Chuck.
You say that now, but it sounds good on paper. But then when it actually happens, all chaos ensues with
Indeed.
Fancy tinned fish and weird nuts.
Have a Malort for me.
Ooh, look at you, fancy. Where's that fancy music? I need that.
That's very fancy.
Programming note for myself. I'll be back Friday morning for the return of Morning Extra. Just needed a little break to take care of some things, get my mind straight, because when you delve into that many stories all the time like that, it really rots your brain, and I don't want that to happen. So Secret Show will be back too in some form or fashion Friday night. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do yet. I think I'm going to mix it up a little bit, but should be a fun time. And of course, Bill, friend of the show, always good to see you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hopefully we'll get to see you again pretty soon. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, folks?
Thanks as always. It's been fun, and you always bring good stuff, often that wouldn't have been on my deck otherwise.
I know.
Oh, great. Glad to hear that. We like to do that. That's one of the things I think we do like to do, Uncle Warren.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of the show is to inform you. We have our opinions on things, but of course, the main focus is to get you the information, and of course, for you to decide for yourself. Use your critical thinking skills. Get out of the cults, get out of the bubbles. I know it's scary out there, and but you have people out there waiting for you that are trying to do the same thing and trying to get the real news. That's what we're trying to do.
I remember thinking.
I remember how the process works. I don't know about actually doing it, but I know there's a process to it. So. Well, other than that, I guess we'll get out of here. Thanks, everybody. Be sure we have donation links down below. If you can help out our folks, if you can't donate, if you can share out the links for them, we appreciate that. Every little bit helps. Also, if you know of anybody who is in need of mutual aid, just let me know. Email me at extrabullet@gmail.com. And just let me know, and we'll put them up so we can let everybody else know too. other than that, if you're new to this, if you could like, share, and subscribe, we appreciate it. We're up to 93 subscribers on our YouTube channel, so we're only 7 away from 100. And even the dog loves it.
Even Margot the dog loves it. Yeah.
Who let those dogs out? Woof, 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 woof.
She's in the cone of shame right now, unfortunately. So
I need a cone of shame too, but for other reasons.
those weird.
But go ahead.
I was going to say something very inappropriate. Never mind.
Okay, I'm glad I interrupted you then. So if you could do that, we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on Facebook, we're on Substack, all that down below. You can check us out, all our links and stuff like that. Otherwise, we'll be back again next Wednesday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Appreciate all you. Appreciate you, Bill. And, of course, appreciate you, Lainey. And we will see you when we see you again. So peace out, home slices. Bye-bye.